Good evening and welcome to 31 Horror Nights 2020. It's October 1st and tonight's movie is The House is October Built. I chose this movie to be first for a couple of reasons. First of all, it has October in the title, so it was a decent way to start out this month. But also because it's a found footage movie that concerns the haunted house attractions. And some of you OGs might recall that also describes Hell House LLC, one of the best movies from the first 31 Horror Nights back in 2017. I just saw the trailer and the premise looks pretty decent. It's a group of people, like young adults, they're in an RV and they're going all around America trying to find the best, scariest, and most intense haunted house attraction. I'm guessing that this is a timeline in which the McCamey Manor doesn't exist. They're looking for the scariest one, and they find it, but that haunted house turns out to actually be, a haunted house. This kind of reminds me of two things. First of all is a Scooby-Doo movie that I saw when I was a kid, Scooby-Doo and the Zombie Island, I think, which had a similar thing. They were looking for an actual haunted house, and they found it. And the other one is a creepypasta I read called No End House, where it starts out seeming like kitschy and fake, and then turns into something real and nightmarish. I have a vague guess about where this is going to go, but I'll tell you when I'm done watching. Alright, so I just finished watching the movie, and the first 31 Horror Nights started off on a bad note with The Descent. The second one started out on an okay note with Caligari. Last one started out really good with Bird Box, and this year has a very mediocre start. I'm giving The House is October Built a 5 out of 10. It is not terrible, nor is it particularly good. It is very middle of the road, especially if you've seen as many found footage movies as I have. The first thing I would like to do is make a correction. For some reason, I assumed that this was going to be like an actual haunted house, a supernatural type of thing. And while there is implied supernatural things in this movie, it's more of a slasher. We got 5 young adults. I don't really remember their names. But what's funny is that throughout the movie, I know there were 5 people, but one of them stays behind the camera almost the entire time. So I realized I forgot the name and the face of the character who's behind the camera. And I had to see that and be like, oh yeah, that person. That is a risk that you run when you do found footage, sort of relegating the camera person to be not really a character. And this movie does kind of fall into that trap. One thing I will give this movie is that the acting is pretty good. There were a lot of moments where the characters are just talking, joking around, laughing, and it read as very real. There was a moment where someone's like, I'm scared, you're scared, we're all scared, and then someone else said, did anybody else hear ice cream, you scream, you all scream for ice cream, and then they laughed, and I laughed too. That came off as a normal interaction among friends. The scares in this movie are okay. There were a couple that I thought were pretty good, but not that many. A lot of it also just stems from the problem that a lot of the shots are just way too dark. I got the impression in the trailer that it was going to be dark a lot, but there were a lot of, little bits, a few seconds where you literally can't see anything. In the credits, they thanked actual, haunted house attractions for doing it, and I will say, a lot of these haunted house attractions, they look legit. Because they are real, but I meant in the terms of being scary and having good makeup and good effects and really good strategies for getting people on edge. But with that being said, I wouldn't really want to watch somebody go through a haunted house attraction like that with a camera, because a lot of it is just darkness, scuffling, screaming, oh look, a scary face, more darkness, it's kind of hard to tell what was going on. There was a point where it was shaking and I think they were in an elevator, and it was hard to follow what was going on for a lot of it, especially inside the walk-in haunted houses. This movie did something that Hell House LLC did, which I liked, where it was sort of blurring the lines where you don't know if what you're looking at is real or fake. You don't know if the person actually wants to hurt you or if it's just part of the attraction. Though again, comparing it to Hell House LLC, there was kind of a thing where there were so many points where all the characters could have left with absolutely no problems and then chose not to. There was only really one guy who was insistent that they see this through to the end. By the 4th or 5th night, everybody else kind of just wanted to go home. And it wasn't like in Hell House LLC where they were trying to make something and they put a lot of money into it and they wanted to see it come together. In this one, it's just go home. While it does have good acting and a few decent scares, overall, if you see this movie and the concept interests you, I would watch Hell House LLC instead. That movie is a lot more subtle, a lot more creative, and a lot more clever in its scares than this one is. It's not bad. I don't want to go around saying that this is just a horrible movie, but there's just not a lot in this movie that I haven't seen in other movies done better. There's not really much else to say about The Houses October Built without going into spoilers, which will start now. Much like Hell House LLC, I'm bringing up that movie so much, I'm sorry, but much like that movie, this one sort of starts at the very end where you see Brandy, the woman in the group, in the trunk of a car getting abducted somewhere, and then it kind of goes back to the beginning. Now, with every found footage movie, you want to look at what you're given and see how did whoever made this movie find it and how am I watching it? Because that kind of crushes the realism if you can't answer these questions. And in this one, I don't know who's supposed to have made it. It was just saying, this contains footage from all the people in the RV and the Blue Skeleton group, which did they make it? I don't know. It's not really clear on that. From what I can tell, the Blue Skeleton group is kind of like a cult, I guess. It's not really supernatural, although there are a few moments in it that you'd think you would need supernatural to pull off, but they never explicitly state that. But as these people keep going through haunted houses as the days goes by, they keep getting more and more feeling that they're being followed. There are people messing with them. There's strange things going on. And one thing they do is that they keep bringing back scares from previous attractions. Because at the first one there was a girl in broken doll makeup. And then on a completely different day, hundreds of miles away, they see that exact same girl in front of their RV. And then she walks in and scares them or whatever. There was a pretty good moment towards the end where they're doing this weird thing where they're trying to they're on a street in New Orleans, I think it was Baton Rouge, where they're wearing these specific skull masks, and they'll say that's how we'll know how to find you and lead you to the haunted house attraction. And one of them, I think I was able to put together where they were going with this. The cameraman, he sees somebody with the mask and he assumes that it's one of their friends, so he follows him into an alley, which is dumb, but whatever. And then you see a bunch of the scares from the rest of the movie. You see a clown you've seen before. You've seen that same broken doll. You see a rabbit with an axe. That was one of the scares way back when. And then they attack him. And basically the rest of the movie is just, the group is all separated. They're scuffling around in the dark. And that's honestly kind of the weaker part of the movie, is when they actually get down to business with doing the climax. The best scares in this movie were ones where they didn't rely purely on violence. Two of them come to mind. The first one was they hear a bunch of rustling outside the RV, and then they turn on the headlights and they see dozens of scary clowns around them. And then a few seconds later, there's more scuffling around, and then they look out the windshield again and they're all gone. And that's what makes me think that there's a supernatural slant to this, but I think the best scare in the movie was somewhere towards the middle, where one of the people behind Blue Skeleton literally breaks into the RV with a camera and just records all of them sleeping. He doesn't sit, they don't say anything, they don't even do anything. It's very quiet and very eerie, just the idea of, even though they didn't do anything, they were there and they were there. Because that video is uploaded on the internet the next day and they find out about it. But despite good moments like that, overall, it's not particularly memorable. There isn't really anything in this movie that I can't say is done better in another movie. Not a bad effort, but I didn't really care for it. Just watch Hell House LLC. Alright, that was it for day one. I'll see you guys tomorrow.